How's it going, everyone? I'm Jake the Ashen Hollow, and welcome to the first Beside the Bonfire podcast. We got some awesome guests today, but I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm Mitch L, law creator, and very happy to be here.
Is it me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Smoughtown, or Jeff. I also create lore. If you want to check out some lore stuff, give me a shout, or not.
I'm Aegon of Astora. I do all sorts of stuff, but primarily exploring the lore of the Souls games in a discursive fashion and looking at it through the lens of critical theory and other long-winded academic things.
Right. Goes deep. Goes deep.
That is very deep. Awesome. So, we have a few topics we're going to be going over today. I'm going to ask some questions. It's almost like I'm a game show host, if you will. All right. So first, I want to talk about Archdragon Peak and kind of the prospect and idea of it being a meditative plane of existence rather than in the physical world. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
Okay, so me first then?
Yes. Sure.
Okay. Archdragon Peak's a very interesting place. I mean, I think what most of us will remember is the process in which we get there, which is a cutscene plays after performing the gesture, the Path of the Dragon, and then our head drops a little deeper than it is usually, and then the screen goes black, and then I believe you hear a dragon, or you hear the flapping of wings, which, obviously it could mean two things. Because then suddenly you're at Archdragon Peak, and it's sunny and everything like that. So either we're transported there by the dragon, or kind of through a meditative process. But I would say if we were transported there physically via flight, something would have played similar to in Dark Souls 1 when the crow carries us to Firelick Shrine, and I believe they omitted that for a reason, because I think if they wanted to make that obvious that we were being transported physically, they would have done that. But the Path of the Dragon in general is something that's very kind of it's an internal process. I mean, you go to I think it's called the Dragonkin Mausoleum in Archdragon Peak, and everywhere there are kind of these dragon acolytes, seemingly what I would say in training, like trying to prove themselves to become worthy of being dragons or wyverns, depending on your kind of view, whether the ancient wyvern was kind of once one of those people. Because I mean, look, they transform partially, and we can do the same. So that power of ascension is something that I would say is a meditative process. And I believe that Archdragon Peak, it's hard to say whether it is physical or not, because it is visible from Anor Londo. I mean, I believe that when you're climbing up the steps off to the right, you can see it on the mountaintops. However, the appearance of it there does not match completely
Is it
with what we
sorry, Mitch. Is it not also visible from the
dungeon?
Bonfire?
Yeah, it's visible from a few places in the game. I think the Anor Londo location is maybe the clearest,
the closest view. Yeah,
maybe, yeah, because it's kind of just in the distance, but you can see the Great Bridge and everything.
You're right, Aegon.
Something else I would point out too is that it's interesting that so I'm a terrible guest. I didn't actually go and look at the cutscene, although I probably should have. But when we go from Vort's Bonfire to the Undead Settlement, we're carried by the
Batwing demons.
Demons. And so it's interesting. So when you hear the noise of the wings flapping and stuff, is that against a black screen? I don't remember.
Yes, it's against the black screen.
So it's really interesting that they would have chosen to do that, thus, ensuring that the only thing you're actually paying attention to is the noise of the wings flapping.
Yes.
Where elsewhere in the game, it actually shows us being carried by the Batwing demons. So,
yes,
that's interesting.
And I'm pretty sure that you don't even hear wings like flapping away or anything when you actually spawn in Archdragon Peak. You're just there.
Yep, agreed.
Because it could also, sorry, and I know I'm cutting in front of Smoughtown here. I apologize.
It's okay, go ahead.
Because it could also, and Bloodborne spoilers, is that like a thing that's okay? Because I think it's
for sure.
I think especially because it's the game that was closest to the development of Dark Souls 3 in terms of, time scales and all that. And there was probably a fair bit of overlap in the development teams.
Undead Settlement, totally Bloodborne.
Undead Settlement, yes, but there are lots of parallels. And another parallel would be, I think, the being picked up by one of the false gods, or the amygdala, outside of Udin Chapel.
Plane of existence, yeah.
Yeah, and then taken to a place that is part of the Dreamlands, is not part of the waking world. So, maybe it's something similar to that, where we're taken by this dragon and then somehow transported, as opposed to actually being physically flown there.
It's a good concept, yeah. Transported to another dimension or plane of existence. Yeah. Definitely. But there's also there's sorry, Jake.
No, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, there's actually twice you transport in Archdragon's Peak. After you defeat the Ancient Wyvern, you appear in the mausoleum, which kind of again suggests that it is in fact, there's the rules of the physical world don't necessarily apply there. And once you've crossed that path of the dragon, you are then transported to the next step, which is the Dragonkin Mausoleum, rather than you traveling there physically.
And presumably summoned by the serpent woman carrying the bell, right? Because as soon as you start spawning in, it's like you're being summoned. It has a sound effect and everything, and you hear the sound of the bell as soon as that happens.
Correct. And you're one of them. They're getting summoned. You witness it happen, but you yourself are one of these challengers, the Path of the Dragon, which goes back to Dark Souls 1. Part of the Path of the Dragon is fighting each other, Highlander style, to tear dragon scales off one another. You kind of see evidence of that. Through Ashley, you find dragon scales all over bodies and stuff, and I just kind of imagine this kind of fight between acolytes trying to prove themselves to be a dragon. You have to fight.
You got Havel Knights there, you've Drake Blood Knights there, so it's interesting concept for sure.
Definitely.
So who is next? Smo, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm just building on that. Just that it goes to a greater question. This, if it's in a meditative state, is about the whole nature of the land of Lothric and the world of Dark Souls. In that, is it a physical world, or is it these several planes of existence suddenly coexisting in one place at once? And I think that Archdragon Peak is real, but the time in which we see it before we meditate to go up to it is a different time from when we actually end up inside it. So I believe it's, I think we're looking at it in maybe the future, closer to the age of dark, and when we meditate, we are brought to it in a different time. That's kind of my thoughts on it, and that it is partially a meditative state, partially a physical place, but the way we exist in it, when we fight the wyvern and we transport, we're fighting other acolytes. It's in a kind of almost dreamlike state of a real physical realm.
And remember, the sun is out as well.
Yeah, after the dark kind of view you get of it from before. So I think it's a physical place, but the way in which we experience it is through the Path of the Dragon, which is through a meditative state in which you are proving yourself against an ancient wyvern, which could or could not have been an acolyte of some sort. And once you do that, you're transported to this kind of not an arena, but a proving grounds of some sort to prove yourself. And then, of course, there's the fight with the Nameless King. Physics don't seem to apply here. We ring a bell, and all of a sudden we're in this kind of cloud land where we can physically walk on. And then again, once we defeat him, we once again transported. We close our eyes to brace ourselves against a storm, and all of a sudden we wake up, 20 foot down, standing on the ground. I mean, to me, it suggests it's coexisting. It's both this physical realm, but we're experiencing it through a meditative state. That would be my take on what Archdragon Peak is.
No, I do like that. I do have one question, because I haven't actually gotten to play Bloodborne because I don't have a PlayStation 4.
Oh, no.
But with the references, isn't where you go in Bloodborne, isn't it called like the Dream or the Nightmare? So.
Dreamlands. Well, there are several different labels for the types of areas, but they're all a part of what is essentially not necessarily an alternate dimension, but it's called the Dreamline. So in a Lovecraftian sense, in that, and it's important to draw the distinction between dreaming in Bloodborne versus dreaming in something like Inception. It's not like you are like the dreams are constituted sometimes as, you know, a mashing up or an entanglement of various different people's consciousnesses or memories and, you know, traumatic events, things like that. But they are real places in the sense that, you know, you don't just wake up and none of it happened, because, you know, you take items from the Dreamlands and you bring them back to the waking world and vice versa.
Okay.
So they're real physical places, but they exist on it's a different plane of existence, effectively.
Yeah.
It's like the Matrix. Your mind makes it real.
Yeah. So it could be like a similar concept with Archdragon Peak.
I'd say even further than the Matrix. I'd say they're actually real. They're real planes of
existence.
existence.
No, I think because you can't take things out of the Matrix and bring them into the real world, right? Like, you can learn things and then, you know, perhaps apply them outside of the Matrix, but
right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's
more real than the Matrix.
That's
or
a good
point. Or that they could be created by dreams, but in that creation they become real worlds. I don't know. It's a difficult one, Bloodborne.
Yeah, we'll be here for hours if we start talking about Bloodborne.
You invited the wrong guest then.
Right. That's fine with me. Like, I got nothing but time.
Well, oh, sorry, go on.
No, sorry, go.
No, you go.
Oh, well, I wasn't. I now need to think harder. So
He's Canadian. You're not gonna win this one. He's gonna make you go.
Yeah. So I asked like about the questions in advance. So I've been thinking about this for the last 24 hours or so about Archdragon Peak and the extent to which. So rather than saying that it's in a meditative state, just in the interest of specificity in terms of, you know, how it is that I conceive of these areas, or the potential for them to be something other than the waking world, the real world as we know it. I think that, you know, there are so many possibilities. It's kind of hard for me to even pin down what my perspective is on this, and that's just kind of due in part as well to how it is that I generally understand the lore of these games, and that I build it together with the people who comment on my videos. And so, you know, in my playthrough, I think I just released the 4th episode, and there's already, I think, 10 hours almost in this series, and we've only gotten through like a quarter of the Undead Settlement. So
wow.
I've been there. Each 10 hours, I've been there.
Well, happy to hear that. But yeah, it's a long ride. But in terms of just speaking more broadly about Dark Souls 3, that I do think that there are various different possibilities, a range of possibilities concerning what is, you know, quote unquote real and what isn't. What is just, you know, an unproblematic physical plane of existence, and what might be something different. Because I think the other thing that needs to be taken into account is the multiverse. As you know, in all 3 Dark Souls games, the world has existed, that there's no single canonical world necessarily, that it exists as sort of a multiverse.
Yeah.
And that's probably too large a can of worms to get into now, but I do think that's something that's worth keeping in mind.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I like, and I mentioned earlier before we started recording, that I like my first inkling of, you know, that there might be some Dreamlands-esque stuff happening here came from a viewer on my channel named Theoman Cassative, who she wrote an essay several months ago about the Untended Graves, and how, you know, that seems to her like it's more likely to be a reflection of the actual world, that we've descended into an age of dark. But then going even further than that, Paragon released a video a few weeks ago where he suggested that effectively the kiln is the truest representation of the state of the world, and that everything else is, you know, either a part of a dreamland or a reflection of, which, you know, Dreamlands could be a reflection of some point in the past. So I would say that insofar as Archdragon Peak is a Dreamlands-esque place, or insofar as it exists in a meditative state, that it's probably not alone.
No.
That there are several other areas in the game, if not the vast majority of the game world that we play in, that exists in a similar state.
Okay.
But that's just me. And again, there's a range of possibilities there. So that's not me saying this is what I think is happening, but that's, the best way I can describe the range of possibilities that I think exists.
Yeah.
Let me interject really quickly. Is it possible that certain areas, kind of, for lack of a better term, rules may be set by the most powerful entity in that area? I mean, you've got Gwendolyn in Dark Souls 1, who's able to kind of think about the amount of things that he is in control of. He's in control of all the Silver Knights because they disappear after the illusion is shattered, as do the giant
sentries.
All that remains really is the Firekeeper, and interestingly, one Boulder Knight and one Berenique Knight, who are Dark Moon soldiers.
Dark Moon Blades. Yeah.
Dark Moon soldiers. Yeah. So, could one, propose the possibility that the Nameless King is really the one who sets the rules in Archdragon Peak in terms of its appearance, physics, everything like that?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I suppose just to further expand on the Bloodborne connection for the benefit of Jake and anyone else who hasn't yet played Bloodborne, or maybe not, haven't looked at the lore from this particular perspective, that in Bloodborne, for example, the Hunter's Dream, so the hub area, is or appears to some degree, and sorry that I keep going with these shoutouts, but Jeux Sans Frontières, or JSF, has a series called Bloodborne Up Close, and he's done 2 episodes on the Hunter's Dream and what it may or may not be, and it appears to be to some degree the creation of Moon Presence, who is one of the great ones. So yeah, Mitch, to your point, I think that is probably as likely a source of, I guess the constructor, the person responsible for constructing or laying out the rules of the area, as anyone else. And especially in the way that the area tries to lead you towards the path of the dragon and against fighting the Nameless King, because there are those developer messages that right next to the bell, which basically say, don't you dare fucking do it. So so maybe that's, I think, as likely a source of it as any.
Bells are kind of a very interesting thing in both Bloodborne and Dark Souls, because one thing that's kind of stuck in my mind since the announcement of Ash's Ariandel is in one of the images that's been put up on the Namco Bandai Facebook page, is it's like, in this land resides a cathedral with no bell, or that has had its bell removed, or something like that. Which, if you think about it, what have bells done in the past in Dark Souls? They've summoned the Nameless King. They've
raised the dead.
They've raised the dead. They've raised the gate to Sen's Fortress, or at least instructed the giants that that's what's supposed to happen. It's I don't know. That's definitely stuck in my head. That's a kind of conversation for another time. But it's cool, definitely.
Well, but if you look at the Nameless King, he's basically a corpse.
Yeah.
There's really not, he looks basically hollow. Insofar as a god can go hollow. Yeah. So maybe he was being raised from the dead? Because he does not look good. He still moves really well, and again, I think that's part of this theme of degeneration and just in Dark Souls 1. I played Dark Souls 1 for 6 hours capturing footage yesterday, so for my Dark Souls 3 Let's Talk Lore series, and always amazed whenever I go back and fight Artorias, just because it's a really hard boss fight, and yet he's at 20% of his abilities or something like that.
Yeah.
Dark Souls is always after the fall, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Always after the fall.
We're coming afterwards and picking up the pieces, right?
You never see the pinnacle. You never see the pinnacle of civilization, of these great heroes that you hear about. You're always picking up the pieces after it's all happened.
It's kind of interesting. The kind of the closest we get are kind of the memories of the giants in Dark Souls 2, which is during the fall. But that's pretty much, that's about as close as you get.
Yeah,
it's actually just it's kind of funny. I think it was probably unintentional, but it's almost like was kind of taking a stab at us lore hunters. Kind of, if you look at the description of some of the stuff to do with Rendell, Night King Randall, sorry. With it says like, oh, there were rumors that he had skin made of dragon scale and things like that. I was like, this just sounds like something like I or Jake would come up with from some like item description somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. Basically, what's filled in the blanks is just rumor and legend, essentially.
Just before I forget, because I meant to bring this up earlier when I started talking about the Dreamlands, but then I got sidetracked with all the other stuff. But the walking on the clouds during the Nameless King boss fight is something that, again, there's a precedent for in Bloodborne. In the Old Hunters DLC, there's a part where basically you see that the sky, or what you thought was the sky, as you ascend higher, it turns out that it's actually an ocean that you can walk on in some way, shape, or form.
Maria,
but it's transparent looking down.
I know,
but not looking up. You can't see what's through the sky, and that goes into the whole topography of, or I guess a sideography, because it wasn't really topography of the various layers of the different areas of the game and stuff like that. But
there's I mean, there's more scope for it in Bloodborne with the Dreamland physics.
Yes,
it's smashed.
I do wonder, and I was looking at this yesterday in Ulasil, in the DLC for Dark Souls 1, where if there are certain spots where you can look down, you can see sort of the abyss. But the deep in Dark Souls 3 is less like the Abyss and more like a Dreamlands type place from Bloodborne. And Aldrich, the original Japanese text for Aldrich is Eldritch, so referring to the Eldritch truth. But I guess when they translated, they didn't want to make it so obvious.
It was pretty obvious, I thought. Eldritch. But yeah.
Jake, you still haven't told us what you think yet.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think things and stuff, but
dude, the Nameless King's the king of Lothric, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. We tag teamed that bitch. Now, I think really what kind of sparked the theory of, the whole meditative state, etc. Obviously, Path of the Dragon kind of looks like a meditative pose, if you will. Then what's kind of curious is I believe it's one of the where you actually go outside of the Irithyll dungeon, where you see the little dragon people doing it, and that's where you have to do it. One of the Drake Blood Knights there, I believe, bleeds when you hit him.
I think all of them bleed, because there's the Lothric Knight as well, and then there's the class of the mercenary armor, I think, which ages ago kind of proposed that might be the official kind of regalia of Karthus, because it's desert-like, and also if Karthus was inspired by the real world kingdom of Karthus in North Africa, the majority of Karthus's forces were actually made up of mercenary soldiers. So but that's kind of a whole other thing. But yeah, no, they do bleed. They do bleed, and they are there.
Then after the Osiris boss fight, the corpse that you actually retrieve the Path of the Dragon gesture from, when you first go to Archdragon Peak, and after you kill the Ancient Wyvern, and you get teleported to the second bonfire, when you go in that room is the first serpent summoner you'll encounter, and he'll summon that Drakeblood Knight. And the first time you kill the Drakeblood Knight, if you go back to the corpse you got the gesture from, that's where you can receive the armor. So it kind of it seemed indicative of me as if you kill this guy, like say, his conscience is here or whatever half of his physical body, however you perceive it, you kill him here, and then back here in the real world.
It's the same with Halo, right?
Wasn't it New Game Plus in which the Drakeblood armor is there? Or am I wrong about that?
Yeah. Sorry, what was that, Mitch?
I thought it was New Game Plus in which the Drakeblood armor set.
You can get it in New Game 1 as well.
Really? Okay, yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Once you kill the Drakeblood Knight, as Jake says, you can take the armor from behind the stairs.
Because that kind of makes you kind of think, it's like, well, what if these things that look dead are actually alive and they're in Archdragon Peak? Interesting.
All right. I guess we ready to move forward? Another topic?
Yeah.
All right.
Talk DLC.
Let's talk DLC.
And Divert Thine Eyes. Which is a great title for a gameplay reveal that contains spoilers.
Right?
Divert Thine Eyes.
Avert Thine Eyes. If you have no interest in anything DLC related, I'll put an annotation in this video when we stop talking about the DLC. So, you have been warned.
That's kind of you.
Alright, see, I don't know. There's like... Okay, I think what we'll do is kind of break it down into different pieces. I think one thing most people are interested in is the giant Corvian-like beast that we see in the trailer, and the father of whom, which the female NPC with the awesome-ass scythe is referring to. And the most likely verdict I've seen so far was, I think the first person to actually mention it, I actually believe, was Vadi, in which he thinks it's Allfather Lloyd. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts would be on that.
What was his evidence for that? Because I haven't watched his video. But what was he saying was the reasoning behind that?
Let me see if I can. I took notes somewhere. Let me see if I can find it on my computer.
I would be very surprised to learn.
He's seen the big guys, Allfather Lloyd.
Yes.
The flagellant.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. But why? Where did he get that idea from?
One of the points was, while I'm looking for my notes, was kind of how he was, I don't want to say expunged, because that's kind of a particular word in Dark Souls, but kind of
fell from grace.
Distance, from the Way of White, and kind of just became, like a forlorn soul, if you will, which is kind of...
Where does it say that he moved away from the Way of White?
Well, in Kareem, they start to think that he's a madman, or they always have thought he's a madman. I think it's the description of... I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But basically, Kareem seems to become the center of the Way of White, and an item description essentially infers that they have always thought he was just a madman that had actually nothing to do.
Yeah, and that his title was self-proclaimed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Where does it say that about Kareem and Allfather Lloyd, though? Do you? I'm just kind of interested because I did the whole video on Kareem, and I don't think I spoke about Allfather Lloyd.
I can't remember. It might be a coin. I can't remember. Do you remember, Jake? What item it is?
I know Allfather Lloyd's on the gold coin in Dark Souls 1, but it doesn't mention anything about Kareem.
I'll find it for you while we're
Who's on the copper coin again?
McLoif. God of medicine and drink.
I picked it up last night, so I think I remember, but I know almost nothing about Allfather Lloyd.
It's Lloyd's sword ring. That's what it is.
Lloyd's sword ring.
Or is it?
That was from Dark Souls 2? No, Dark Souls 3. That's Dark Souls 3.
Here we go. The clerics of Kareem had always strongly asserted that Lloyd was a derivative fraud That is All-Father title, what self-proclaimed. That's what it says.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting. Because I must have missed that, because what I kind of focused on, what I was talking about, Morn and the unnamed Archbishop of the Way of White, and basically how they were using Cather, and how Cather kind of fitted into everything. That's interesting though. So I don't know. All-Father Lloyd being the big Corvian dude, I don't know if I buy that. Like, even if the evidence just says that he left the Way of White, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I was confused by the whole thing, because I was it was either yesterday or the day before. I was on one of Ella's live streams. He was doing a Bloodborne viewer run, and someone in the chat just blurted out, "Oh, what do you think about All-Father Lloyd being in the Dark Souls 3 DLC?" And I'm like, spoilers, please. Like, but the way they said it made it seem as though like it was like you could actually see like a life bar at the bottom that said All-Father Lloyd.
Yeah.
And so like they sent me a PM to say, "Oh, well, it was in the gameplay reveal," which I hadn't watched at that point. But still, it seems strange to me that it was like a foregone conclusion when it seems to me that it's still very much an open question.
Definitely agree with that.
Maybe we start by talking about the setting.
Yeah.
As opposed to something that specific.
Yeah.
What general thoughts on the setting?
Well, first the fact that it's a snowy place, and so the only other places we've been with snow were Painted World in Dark Souls 1, in Dark Souls 2,
Liam Lois.
Frozen Liam Lois.
And Irithyll, I guess you could say. But...
Yeah, and Irithyll, but like really snowy. And I remember when I first played the Crown of the Ivory King, thinking that it was snow, but it turns out it was actually ash, which is interesting. But there was one of the outfits, or one of the armor sets. There's the one enemy that we're facing who has a helmet with stag's horns on it.
That's a Dark Wraith helmet.
That's a Dark Wraith helmet?
Yes, it is. If you pause it and look close, it's got a skull in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Because the Dark Wraith does have like similar growths coming out of it, but it looked much more like a stag helmet in the vein of, say like one that Robert.
Hold on a sec. Are we talking about the same guy? I'm talking about the thing that fights you with the wolf.
The really big one, at about 250 in the official video.
Okay, and we were talking about different things.
Oh, okay. So it reminds me a lot of the Mira garb, the one that is worn by what's his face, the invader guy.
Oh, Creighton.
What's that? Sorry.
Creighton of Mira.
Oh,
yeah,
Creighton. Yeah. That it has like stag sigil on the chest, and so I don't know if that means anything, because that's a very distinctive looking helm.
True, but I would just kind of say maybe it's more just an allusion to kind of Nordic warriors because of the setting, rather than it being a connection. I mean, obviously there is the allusion to the stag of Mira, but I think it's more just an illusion because it's a snowy realm and they're going to make them look Nordic warriors, and that's just the look they've gone for rather than anything else.
Touché.
Unfortunately, unfortunately,
well,
as much as I'd love to see it as a bigger connection, I would just thematically think it fits in a Norse realm.
I've put the screenshot of that thing I was talking about in the chat. If you want to have a look at it.
Oh yeah, so that is a Dark Wraith, quite correct.
So there's a couple things. There's that. It looks like the sword is like similar to a Roman gladius, how it becomes wider towards the top. Mm-hmm. The armor set is the chain set, just the chain armor, and then the shield I do not recognize. It has a lion's face on it, from what I can tell.
I think
that's not the Llewellyn shield.
Is that the what? Sorry. The
Llewellyn shield or the Drang shield, whatever it's called in this game.
No, I think it's actually a wolf, because it slowed down when there's a certain, I don't know if it was a block or a parry that the shield did, but it like shot out a visage of a wolf, like from the shield.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And he looks like an NPC type fight rather than a standard enemy fight, doesn't he? So
Yeah, that's kind of one of the hot topics of debate is whether or not this is like a summonable player for a boss fight, or if it's an NPC inside of the boss fight.
Yeah, because it could be like, oh my god, the Dark Ray.
Yeah.
Or it's just a player. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It could be kind of similar to like the Mirror Knight in Dark Souls 2, when a player is spawned.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you'd know anything about that, Jake.
Has anyone compared the tower that shows up to that which we find at Firelink? Because there's a spot at about 2 minutes in the official reveal where we see what looks like it could potentially be a like the same basic Firelink design that we see in three places in the main game.
So
it looks almost like it could be the
Firelink
ruins of a Firelink shrine.
Right. Well, what does the lady say? We've got no need for your fire here, or something like that. Is that what the dialogue is?
When she comes into the room.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Doesn't she say something about like not requiring your fire, or is like your fire has no use here, or something like that?
Which would make total sense if this is a ruined Firelink shrine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the same spot where we're fighting the guy with the stag helmet. It looks similar, but I think you would have to do a side-by-side of both of them to get a better idea of whether or not there's actually anything there, which, again, I'm a bad guess I didn't do.
Ooh.
I think she says we have no need for your flame. Is the word
A flail.
Same idea,
she
though.
actually
Same
says. She actually says flail.
Flail.
Father, you have no.
No need for your flailing here.
What? So you just come into the room?
No, it was
just, like...
translated from Japanese.
All right. Well, the flail is what he's setting himself in the back with a flail, like a flagellant. The big guy.
Why are you flailing yourself?
To quickly step backwards, I was looking for something and I discovered something else. An article on Eurogamer that was uploaded, I think, 3 days ago. Someone there wrote an article after being able to play the demo himself, and I think that character we were just talking about is actually part of the boss fight. He's called the Champion's Grave Tender. And the wolf himself, or herself, whichever, is a boss called the Grave Tender.
Very cool.
So,
that is very cool.
That is super interesting.
So basically Sif? Because that's what Sif was. He was tending to what was symbolically Artorias' grave, right?
Yeah.
Or a descendant of, that'd be really cool.
Which is interesting that the Wolf of Farron looks nothing like Sif.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's much more lean.
Like a surrogate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think,
On the topic of that big crow, we need to come up with a proper name for this thing. The big crow thing. It's kind of shackled to the chair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's whipping itself. So it'd be an interesting thing to think about whether this punishment is kind of chosen, like it's being done voluntarily, as flagellation commonly was in most cases back in medieval times.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of been imposed, and what caused this. Because there are, and I know we've got to be careful here, there are kind of theories that the Way of White engineered the undead curse, and there is kind of evidence for that. And if Allfather Lloyd was the so-called head of the Way of White, if he had kind of been involved in the engineering, this is all hypothetical, of the undead curse, this might be something he feels guilty for. I don't know. This is, if it is Allfather Lloyd, which I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either.
And if it is, it'll be under a different name. It'll be like, I don't know, Sinner Lloyd, or something, a different pseudonym.
Something like Lothric from Old Hunters.
Yeah,
probably.
not like
Lothric the Accursed, and then Holy Lothric Holy Blade. Yeah.
Okay. I just get so excited about that.
Aside from identity, then, do you think that what the word I was looking for? Do you think he could be kind of like the first of the Corvian that we are introduced to in Dark Souls 3?
Maybe. I mean, think about what we know about Corvians. We know they're heretical storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
So is this flagellation a result of heresy?
Yeah.
and that's what they're telling the stories about, like as maybe a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
As in, don't do this or you'll end up like this guy.
And I believe the storyteller staff, or maybe one of the Corvian weapons speaks, or I think it's the scythe actually, speaks of a mistress in the painted world that wields a similar scythe.
Yeah, from the painted world, yeah.
And it also shows, like, when it first introduces this character, it shows her feet. Which was a, like, silly kind of obsession with a lot of people. Like, oh my god, you can see Priscilla's feet. So, but I have a feeling like it's almost too obvious.
Yeah.
Like, because, FromSoft knows that there's literally a whole industry of talking heads like us who, pick apart every single aspect of these trailers. And this is actually the first time I've ever done anything like this publicly, because anytime I've ever even tried to speculate on what's coming in a DLC, From has always made me look stupid. So, like, I remember, and again, so I apologize to anyone who's getting annoyed the constant Bloodborne references, but given the proximity and all that, like I said earlier, I think it's a good guide for what we might be able to expect.
Yes.
In the lead up to the Old Hunters, a lot of people were looking at Lady Maria, and there were a number of reasons for this, including the notion that, well, whatever, I'm going to leave that aside for now, but there were a number of people, I think Redgrave is one of the first to suggest this, that Lady Maria, the character that we see in the DLC and all the promotional material, was actually Runesmith Carol, and that obviously didn't come to fruition. And so, like, I think it's interesting, and it can be fun to speculate, but I also think we shouldn't get maybe too hung up on it.
I think you're absolutely right.
I think the history of the DLC from the series shows that most of the time they will go with completely new characters, completely new lore. There'll be little allusions, little bits of added things, but I'm always one for that it'll be a new character.
That's what I've
seen before.
Exactly.
And I think the history of the DLC shows that. I mean, Artorias are the best. Okay, Artorias are the best. But all the DLC, Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, Ludwig, apart from that, all new characters.
Apart from Ludwig and Lawrence, but like they weren't really shown as being, a big part of the DLC. Like the main bosses of the DLC. So like Maria and Maria was mentioned as being a possible apprentice, but because of the translation from Japanese to English, the neutral gender pronoun it was just assumed that it was a male. So there was hints of Maria in the base game, but the Orphan of Kos and like that whole storyline, which is basically the centerpiece of the DLC, there was no indication of any of that in the main game.
Yeah, and I mean the DLC for Dark Souls 2, obviously the second one, Iron King, okay, we're looking at another bit, but the majority of those 3 crowns, completely new lore, completely new story, and I think we'll be looking at more or less the same. There'll be some bits connecting it to the main story for the fans, but I reckon they'll go in a different direction. It'll be content they've wanted to do in development that they'll have stored, and now they're bringing it, and it'll be new stuff.
And it's probably going to piss off a lot of people because like, everyone has all this, like, what do you want in the DLC, and like these are all the pieces of story missing from the main game, and this, so they have to do something with this, they have to do something with that, and then like my guess is that they're just going to do something completely different, and but that I think is whenever they've done that, it's always been something that's been great in its own right. So
and part of the reason that makes the lore good is when it's not covered properly. Like the Angelic Faith, I said I want more Angelic Faith, but at the end of the day, it's interesting to me because of the way it is, and I'm not going to throw a BF if they don't bring it anymore.
And that's intentional on Miyazaki's part and the rest of his team.
It's total design philosophy. Which I think is really admirable, because I think that a lot of filmmakers, a lot of game designers, really, they think their audiences are stupid, and they're really worried that this point that they're trying to get across won't come across if it's told too subtly. So they really bang it down your throat. So it's very admirable that
a lot of Japanese gamers don't like that as well. They don't like the obvious forced in your throat.
But that's the thing. But you don't have to listen to holotapes or watch unskippable cutscenes. You can choose to engage with the story or not, right? And that was the thing that really annoyed me about. And I know we're getting way off track here, and that's mostly my fault, so I apologize. But that's what really annoyed me shortly after the release of Destiny was when everyone was like, "Oh, well, stop complaining about the story. It's just like Dark Souls. Everyone says Dark Souls is good." I'm like, no.
The same.
It's more work to create gaps in the story such that it ensures that everyone will be able to have their own interpretation than it is to just scrap your entire story 6 months prior to the game's release and then put it on a website somewhere.
That was sad.
Yeah.
Sad.
I think
dangerous territory. I think Destiny. Dangerous territory.
But I didn't mean to put a damper on anyone's willingness or the enjoyment that they derive out of speculation. Because
yeah.
But that's
I do.
I
just try not to get too caught up in it. That's all.
Yeah,
I agree.
Partly because I try not to get caught up in hype trains in general, because then you're much less likely to be disappointed.
I can't resist. I can never resist.
Yeah.
And you don't look like a tit either when it comes out. It's completely opposite of what you said.
All right. So before we move on from the DLC, I'll just ask one more question about it, and it's not really about the trailer, and it's not about this first upcoming DLC specifically, just kind of a broad question. But with Miyazaki practically confirming that this will be the last Souls game,
last Dark Souls game, you said.
Yeah, or Dark Souls, yeah, excuse me, yeah. Do you think, whether in this DLC or the next, that we'll finally see Velka?
Oh god, I could have called this question. No, I don't think so, and I hope it stays that way.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jake.
No. Like, a lot of people think, because I mean, obviously, I am Velka fanboy 69 on the forums. No, I don't want to see her either, because it's.
You love her though because you haven't seen her.
Yeah, exactly. And plus,
you wouldn't be as interested if you hadn't seen her.
And it would also suck if she was really ugly. No.
I think we can tell from her statues that she's got some nice hair. That's about it.
Yeah, she's got some hair. She using Garnier Fructis or whatever the fuck it's called.
She's worth it.
Yeah. All right.
What's next?
So
can before we move on from the DLC, can I ask if anyone has any thoughts about that one spot where the snow is covered in blood and there are little like pustules sticking out of the ground?
Yeah.
And then very basilisk-esque enemies.
Flies. Yeah.
Pretty sure they have named those things on the Facebook page.
oh, do they?
Or maybe not named them, but they spoke a little bit about them in just like a photo caption. But those things, and I know it's probably not a connection, reminded me of the fungus on Osiris's back. But
yeah.
In terms of fun,
I did not make that connection. Yeah.
But it is different. It's the one on Osiris is thinner. It's blue. Although it does grow on the backs of Gru as well, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Or at least the dead shamans. I
It's
don't
also
know.
kind of reminiscent to me of the River of Blood from the old Hunters.
That's what it's
Oh
more
god, I have
reminiscent for me,
nightmares
yeah.
about that place.
Yeah, definitely.
PTSD.
Yeah, well, that's basically PTSD, the area embodied. So
You got Gatling guns on one end, and you've got a giant
Bloodlickers.
horseman on the other end. It's great area.
The Bloodlickers, great enemies.
But yeah, I guess now that I'm looking at it, they do look rather different. And I was thinking they looked a lot like the basilisk, but they're actually
They're like flies. This kind of looks to me like they're. It looks like a carcass almost. A carcass almost that they're kind of. You know how flies kind of embed themselves sometimes in animals, wounded animals or dead animals, and incubate. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like some kind of incubation field for these flies. That's what it is to me. I'm not sure what blood it is and what it's incubating in, but that's what it reminds me of.
Can someone confirm this for me? Are their wings like tree root like? Are they like twig like?
they look just like the wings that you would see on a normal housefly, I think.
Okay, yeah, because
not...
we've seen so many things about like in Dark Souls 3 about like
overgrowth, basically.
The hollow butterflies. The
hollow trees.
Yeah. But yeah, if we're not sure at this point, that's cool.
Oh, but they definitely they look more organic than, or maybe organic's not the word, more biological.
Membranous. Don't know. They're just
more like the wings that you would see on a housefly if you were to like obviously size them up like 300 times. Honey, I sized up the flies.
I sized up the flies.
God damn it, Safe.
Damn it, Safe.
But yeah, the entire like area just like the lands. I've had it basically looping on my monitor on the left here at like 10% speed, and just it looks beautiful. And I'm not really sure, other than perhaps the possibility of that one spot at about the 2-minute mark being a Firelink Shrine. I'm not really sure if I have any more insight to really add, other than I'm hyped, obviously.
Yeah.
Random question: how's everyone planning on? Is everyone doing like a blind playthrough, live streaming?
I'm just gonna do lore afterwards.
Offline?
Like I don't really do just plays or let's plays even.
Yeah, I was gonna.
I would do it. Let's play.
I was gonna stay up all night and
I've got a
just
final
play through
question.
it.
I've got
Yep.
a final question, if you don't mind, Jake.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry. What religion do we think is associated here? There's obviously just a lot of religious imagery flying through it. Do we think it's the Way of White? Because we've seen a lot of kind of separation from the traditional pantheons we've seen in the first game, and kind of divergence of kind of all these individual sects. What do we think is involved here? Do we think it's the Way of White or something else?
I think, because I think the new miracle we get actually is a direct reference to the Way of White. The circle we throw, I think, it says something about it, and being indicative of the ring of the Way of White.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think if sorry, go on.
No, Aegon, you go.
I was just gonna say, I think that if there is like any particular group that is, like, I think if there is going to be a storyline like this, that it would be probably that the Way of White was either that they left and went to this place by themselves, or that they were potentially banished there by Aldrich and company. Because when you consider the context of the Velka statue in the Undead Settlement being basically closed off, and in the cleansing chapel, the fact that the thing, like the altar that we see, if you look behind it, you can actually see a statue of Velka that's been covered up by the boss fight in that area. How am I forgetting all these things?
Pontiff?
It's been a long day. Yeah, not the Pontiff, but the Cathedral of the Deep boss.
Cathedral or Deacons of the Deep?
Deacons of the Deep. Yeah, there's like a deacon statue, or not a statue, like a diorama almost, and then if you look behind it, you can see there's a Velka statue. So it seems clear that Aldrich and company are trying to push the Way of White out. In terms of like the power structure of Lothric or whatever. So I think if there is any religious angle to this, and that would probably be it.
Yeah,
that's just me, and again, I'm probably
the Way of White are kind of a very interesting kind of element of the whole thing, because I mean, in terms of Bloodborne, I would say they're just as corrupt as the Healing Church, for instance, but really maintain this kind of visage of righteousness. And I think this is most obvious in that they are quite dangerous in some dialogue from Petrus from Dark Souls 1, which I'll read to you. It's when you kind of allow him to teach you miracles, and if you pay him, if you kind of bribe him, he'll give you some more information about why.
1,200 souls.
Yeah.
He says, my companions are Milady and her young knights. She is young but burdened with an undead mission. We are her defenses to keep her from harm. And then you ask him again. He says, an undead mission. Regrettably, I cannot share that with you, but you're my pupil. Perhaps if you show your faith, so you pay him a bit more. And so then you've already got something there. But then he says, very well, I can surely tell you, of all people, undead clerics are given a mission to seek kindling. Kindling is the art of feeding bonfires with humanity. Through kindling, we shall one day be granted magnificent powers. So, of course, kindling allows us to pump up our Estus more. They're trying, I mean, in my opinion, it really goes to show that the Way of White are trying to weaponize the bonfires in a way. They are trying to make the bonfires a more tangible source of power.
Yeah.
I mean, there is that. There's also a theory that I think Epic Namebro did years and years ago, that they are still working against the Dark Soul, and what they're doing is A, they're getting rid of undead from their communities, and B, what you're doing is you're actually feeding what could be the dark soul into the bonfire system. So you're killing two birds like with one stone, essentially.
Yeah, it's a win-win for the gods.
Mhm.
And I still kind of hold to that they're trying to, fight against the darkness by using undead as soldiers who they don't want in their society anyway, and be getting rid of parts of the dark soul.
Another thing I noticed yesterday, which is really interesting in light of Dark Souls 3 when I was playing Dark Souls 1, was, and I just remembered it now when Mitch brought up that particular line of dialogue, is that Vince, so there's Vince and Nico. I think Vince is the one who talks, and Nico's the one who just sort of mutters, right?
Yeah.
He goes, or something like that.
Yeah.
The first time I came across Horus, I laughed because I thought that, he's just like not talkative like Nico was in Dark Souls 1. But then I'm just like, wow, I'm such an idiot. It seems almost like Nico's had his tongue removed too. So as bad as Aldrich and company are, or Aldrich, I keep calling that, I don't really know what to refer to that faction as. I guess the deep worshippers or something.
Yeah.
But as bad as they are for, Aldrich in particular for removing Horus's tongue, it seems like the Way of White does some similarly shady and, morally reprehensible things.
But I think Aldrich takes a lot of his teachings from the Way of White. I think he was part of the Way of White, I think, because he was a
But then
saint.
he saw the age of the coming deep sea, I think it's...
I mean, he was a cleric, because remember, what's his name? The Deserter tells you he was a cleric.
Hawkshaw.
Yeah.
Hawkwood. Whoops,
Yeah.
Hawkshaw.
He tells you he was a cleric,
Shut
and
up,
he's a saint alongside Archdeacon Klimt, who's obviously part. I mean, he takes it from the Way of White. He started his own business, but
There's also some translation ambiguity there. One of my Japanese viewers, named Yosaho, has been providing some very helpful translation clarifications, which, let me see if I can pull it up here really quick. Because part of the Hawkwood's dialogue is he says something to the effect of that the Way of White made Aldrich or something, but in the Japanese text, there's no reference in the Japanese text to right and proper cleric. There's no use of the word developed or they made him. And so the comment that's here interpretive comment from this person, Yoso, says it's very clear that Aldrich was imprisoned. So he may have come from the Way of White in some way, shape, or form, but that relationship seems to have descended into some sort of acrimony and hatred, and he's just maybe trying to destroy them for what they did to him.
Well, he's a disgrace, isn't he? I think that he became what he is prior to his incarceration. He started eating humans. And if he is a cleric, he is a disgrace, and he's a problem. So let's make him a saint, stick him in a casket, make him a Lord of Cinder. Problem solved. Problem solved.
Well, like you said, it's like another win-win, right? For whoever is behind all these machinations, right?
He's a symbol. We got rid of him, and we can burn him for the fire. Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
Something kind of interesting in there to do with the process in which one becomes a Lord of Cinder. Is it something that you're told to do, or is it kind of a rite of passage? Because think about it, how did we do in Dark Souls 1? Okay, we were prophesized to do it, so we just did it because there was nothing else to do. Gwyn, I guess you could say, because it was his duty as he saw it. Aldrich, it does say I believe in the description of his cinders, either his cinders or his soul, it says, after ruminating on the fading of the flame, he kind of took it upon himself to devour the gods. But that's not becoming a Lord of Cinder, or maybe it is, I don't know. Yorm, you got Yorm, and then of course you've got Lothric, the twin princes, which Smoughtown just released a video on, which was great.
Thanks, man.
In terms of the twin princes, which are a great, very interesting point of lore. Kind of talks about it was almost a familial tradition. To link the flame, like something
raised to do it,
raised to do it. It's something he would never undertake. Which Lorien seems much more suited to do. But it kind of comes into do you choose to be a Lord of Cinder or to link the flame, or is it something that's
a good point?
I think to some degree that's been the central conflict in the Souls games as far as the player character is concerned from the start, and that is you're framed as having some choice, but really you don't have much at all. And what's more is that, and this ties into how the story of the game is, comes together, in that there's no one single interpretation. And similarly, history is often written, and Artorias is a prime example of this. And Miyazaki said so in interviews himself, that, we often make these grand heroic narratives out of history, when in fact, the true stories are generally far more mundane, but also involve a much larger collective of people, as opposed to just these individual, I'm going to come and do everything myself and save the world, which doesn't actually happen.
Yeah.
But you're shepherded, and it's the same with the Lord of Cinder. Lord of Cinders are quite interesting because they're kind of a parallel of what you are in a lot of ways. But it also opens up the debate: are Lords of Cinder people who have linked the fire like Gwyn? And I think no. I think a good example of that, and a kind of show for that, is Lothric. Lothric never, ever linked the fire. He's just given that title because he is someone who's to burn.
Well, but the throne is ready for him to take on that role, and that's why he says Holy King Lothric, right? Like the last hope of his line, because he doesn't have any children, and they prepared it for him so that he could become the king, take the throne.
Yeah, but
at least that's my view of it.
It doesn't mean they've linked the fire. What's the guy's name who can transpose stuff? He has linked the fire. He has linked the fire. Bloodleth, he apparently has. That's his chat, anyway. But Gwyn's called Lord of Cinder because he's linked the fire, and a lot of people take it that these chaps have all linked the fire and then been resurrected to burn. But I think they've just been nominated to burn.
Does say specifically, I think, I linked the fire, therefore becoming a Lord of Cinder, or something to that effect. Like his dialogue draws like a causal connection between the two. But you're right in that it's not necessarily true that if you're a Lord of Cinder, you link the fire, because obviously Prince Lothric is, a counterexample to that.
And I doubt Aldrich would have as well. Jorm may have. It's debatable, and I just think it's a title that's forced upon you. Who are the powerful souls that we need to burn? It goes back to Dark Souls 1. We need powerful souls.
I think it said that Yorm linked the fire to put the profane flame to rest. So it wasn't necessarily in the interest of continuing the Age of Fire, rather for whatever reason he thought, that it would disperse the profane flame or whatever that is.
But maybe that's a conversation for the next podcast.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
But one kind of last point before we move on, if we are ready to move on, is something that actually kind of got me into actually doing this. Is it actually came from an argument I was having with someone on Facebook. I told him that no, Lothric never linked the flame, and he said, yeah, he did. He's a Lord of Cinder. It says so, he did. And I'm like, no, he's not. And I'm gonna make a video to prove it. But something I didn't kind of think about until later on is that Lothric, the Prince Lothric, in a way, does link the flame, and he does it. Well, you kind of do it for him by proxy. Yeah. You, in the same way that he would allow himself to be burnt for the flame, you do that for him. You do that on his behalf, using his soul, and his brothers for that matter.
Good point.
So you complete his journey for him, because back in the day, I'm sure, in terms of like many cycles before, only one cinder would be required to prolong the flame. But it's gotten to this point that it requires 5. More cinder needs to satiate the fire to keep it burning.
And yet it's weaker and weaker each time, even then.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like upgrading strength past like 60.
Diminishing returns,
diminishing returns, essentially. So yeah, I don't know, because I really like Lothric, and I kind of wish that I had a bit of closure to he and his brother's story.
It's one of the best stories. It's
fantastic. But yeah, onwards and upwards if we are progressing.
All right. Yeah. Sounds good. And I guess the last question I have was actually something that I considered one of those things that was about as definite as you can get, kind of like the firstborn being the nameless king. It's never like written out for you, but it's kind of, it is, or whatever. But I've actually been seeing a lot in the community lately that there are people that don't think that, almost as many as there are that think that, and that is Guinevere the Queen of Lothric?
I think so. Yeah.
Age-old questions. Yes.
Yeah. That was.
Although I do want to bring up one thing in terms of on the topic of the Queen of Lothric is something that a lore hunter who has since stopped making videos, which is kind of sad because he had some interesting thoughts. His name was Radec, Radec, and he looked at the Japanese translation of the item description that says that the Queen of Lothric resembled or was revered as a goddess of bounty or fertility or whatever it says. Yeah. The Japanese description is much more ambiguous about that. It's like she looked like, or like, and if you say she just looked like, well, that could mean anything. You could look like Guinevere. Okay, you got brown hair and big tits. That doesn't make you a goddess of fertility and bounty. I don't know. I think that's going to be one of the questions that keeps people guessing.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on, Jake.
I was gonna say that was one of the first things in the first video I ever made when I was talking about Rosaria and Gertrude and such. Kind of the thing that I needed to do was, prove that Guinevere was the Queen of Lothric, and I think between, like you said, the divine blessing is kind of like a big selling point, and I believe her ring also. Let me pull up the wiki because I'm just
Princess Sun Ring.
Yeah. Because I'm just completely, unprepared as usual in any one of my videos I've ever done.
It's the hidden blessing, isn't it, that mentions her?
The hidden blessing says she's kind. She was kind to the rootless warrior.
Hidden blessing's about, it's about her visiting the untended graves.
The untended graves, yeah.
Yeah.
That's another interesting point for sure.
Let's see.
Because Guinevere historically has always cared for soldiers and knights who kind of have been given their duty by someone they don't really know.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other one was the Sun Princess ring mentions Guinevere leaving her home with a great other many deities and became a wife and mother, raising several heavenly children. Yeah. And we know that Gertrude is referred as the heavenly daughter, and then
possibly Rosaria and onwards. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what I found interesting, because I guess one of the big things people like to bring up is, she's married to Osiris or whatever, but in Dark Souls 1 it said she married Flame God Flan. But I think it was actually the Sun Princess ring that said it in Dark Souls 1 as well, which I think is interesting now that the Sun Princess ring simply states and became a wife and mother, and just kind of completely leaves a name out.
Yeah, and I mean, people never kind of take into account the lore of Dark Souls 2, which essentially establishes there's many cycles over and over again. Who knows how many cycles have passed between Dark Souls 3 and 1? I'd say maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. And I mean, in this time, Guinevere seems to permeate through every age, and her husbands might not. Flan might have been the first of many. That's kind of my thoughts on it, is that Flan was the first one after the first fall, but we're several falls afterwards at this point. And she's married again, and Osiris is a completely different character, not Flan. Flan's a long dead husband at this point.
Well, hopefully that means that the firstborn's name wasn't Flan. Otherwise,
that makes
cheeky stuff going on.
It makes a lot more sense than when I explained it by just making a divorce rate joke.
Wow. No,
well, if she is Lothric's mother, and Lothric had a wet nurse, that suggests that she's still, at the time of the game, fertile, because you use a wet nurse because lactation can get in the way of ovulation, and so therefore making it less likely that you have another son to carry on the line.
Yeah,
but also it's just a tradition for royalty to have that done by someone else.
Yeah. Plus we know
it just was.
Yeah. Plus we know she had Ocelot at some point after Lothric.
And then pissed off. Yeah.
For some reason, when I think of Ocelot, I always think of that show with Maury Povich. It's like, you are not the father, and Osiris just gets super mad. Like,
I think of Metal Gear Solid.
yeah, that's good too. Yeah.
What's interesting about Osiris is that obviously I don't know why I didn't mention this in the video, because I did think of it. Is that Osiris is obviously an allusion to the Egyptian god of the same name but spelled differently, Osiris, who is the Egyptian god of rebirth and things like that, and fertility. He's got other links to various things. He's the father of Horus, as well, who's obviously a child that's very important to Egyptian mythology. And I just don't know why the hell I didn't mention that in my video, because it's obviously quite important.
Back when I did my Lothric Kingdom video, I did talk a little bit about the etymology of Osiris, but I didn't talk about Horus.
Because Horus is a half child. He's half falcon, half.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so,
That's cool.
Horus is the god of war as well, isn't he? Can't remember. Horus is a half falcon child that he has, but Osiris actually conceives the child when he is dead. He's cut into pieces. So it's just. It's interesting. I need to look into it a bit more.
That's part of the problem that I think we all run into sooner or later when looking at these references, is that Miyazaki said specifically that he puts a lot of thought into the names that he uses. I think he called himself in the Bloodborne guide, the interview, called himself a naming geek.
Oh,
and
really?
So, he puts a lot of thought into things, but at the same time, like, there are so many references to so many different media, and ancient and modern, and it just gets so unwieldy sometimes when you're trying to consider all these different influences and how they sort of play with each other.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just an illusion. I mean, Osiris, the Egyptian god, isn't the character of Osiris in the game. It's just an illusion, the Hell's Realm. I mean, like you say, you can look far too much into it, really.
Yeah,
worth mentioning.
Well, that's what we all do. So I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
What was next, Jake?
Those were the 3 topics I had for today.
Okay.
Well,
we've been recording for over an hour now, haven't we?
Oh, really?
Hour and 10 minutes.
Before we go, is there any reasons that are given to why they don't think that she's the Queen of Lothric, and any kind of alternates apart from Rosaria?
Well, one thing I mentioned was the flame god Flan. I think another was the fact that it would be too far in time. I think I've seen a few people say, which doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, they're entitled to their opinion.
Too far in time meaning too much time has passed?
Yeah, as
like
if she should have perished from old age, I guess is what they're...
But she's also a god.
Yeah.
And
well, and her brother exists. Her brother's still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The nameless king is still alive.
Yeah. And Gwendolyn was alive.
Yeah.
Maybe he's alive. He was certainly raised from the dead, at least, in order to fight as if he is dead. But also, and not to plug my own work too much, but
no, go for it, man.
I did the episode 4 of Let's Talk, the first episode of the Undead Settlement. Even though I'm naming them based on the areas, but I talk about different things in each episode. I went to great lengths to kind of outline, to explain cosmology in terms of the Big Bang and the Big Crunch, and the impact that has on how the relationship between space and time are basically one thing. That the example I raised was the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, which if you look at it, it's just a bunch of galaxies, but the ones that are farthest away are actually, we're seeing them not as they are now, but as they were 13 billion years ago.
Yeah.
So space and time are connected in such a way that, and all of our understandings of cosmology are based on the idea that the universe is expanding, but we don't know what would happen if the universe were to stop expanding and then start contracting, as it is in Dark Souls 3.
That's what I see. Yeah, definitely what I see Dark Souls 3 happening, definitely.
And so that can do some really, because there are ideas that once the expansion of space reverses itself, that causality could actually reverse itself too.
Yeah.
So whenever someone goes, lol, time is convoluted, I don't think that they're considering the possibilities of what might happen in our world. Of course, we'll all have been dead for 10 billion years when this happens, or if it happens. But if space started contracting as opposed to expanding, then crazy shit could happen. So really, it's not a stretch in the slightest to say that Guinevere is still alive and kicking.
Yeah.
On that, Aegon, because that's something really interesting. My ears really picked up when you started talking about cosmology. And
I'm glad, because I wasn't sure if everyone would be with me there.
No, because I was thinking about making a video of my own about this whole concept of literal cosmology and how it affects Bloodborne. Because if you think, sorry, not Bloodborne. What am I saying? Dark Souls. Because this really something caught my eye just before you go to the kiln of the first flame in Dark Souls 3, and it's how Lothric Castle looks, and it's crushed. It's absolutely destroyed. It's all smushed together, right? And on the left-hand side of the screen when you arrive.
You mean the landscape we see when we exit the Flameless Shrine?
That's right.
It's been pulled in like a whirlwind, essentially.
Exactly, but that's nothing that like humans could do in the way that looks specifically.
Mm-hmm.
If they just wanted to make it look destroyed and ruined, they could have done that. But this is it's almost like a pillar of
it's impossible space, basically.
It's like what Aegon said, though. It's like this energy getting sucked into like a cyclone, essentially. This is the center of the event that's going to happen, and that event is all the energy, which is represented by souls, is being twisted and pulled and contorted towards this one central point, which is the flame, which will eventually burst a new relight and another big bang type thing.
So like everything will be squished in a big crunch, is what it's called, into a singularity. At which point, the world will either end, but it seems far more likely, considering the role that cycles play in all the Souls games, seems far more likely to me that it will actually, contract until it's at a singularity and then start expanding again.
And that's what Link in the Fire does, I think. So you redistribute the energy in the world.
Interesting, yeah.
Which is symbolized by souls, that you kind of get this kind of condensing of souls and energy and landscapes in the final game till it gets to this point. You're the catalyst and you cause this big bang and you disperse the energy again. The souls get redispersed.
Interesting.
Pushing the dark back is what kind of...
Yeah, there's so many different possibilities, for sure.
Yeah.
This is something, just really quick, because Aegon, I know you're a sciencey guy. You know the science stuff way better than I do. Is the
well, no, I'm not a natural, but I study the place of science and technology in society, but I'm not myself a scientist or anything like that.
You read those things called books. That's what I mean. Because this is something interesting to me, is basically how a supernova occurs. And basically, from my understanding of how a supernova occurs, it's something to do with the amount of hydrogen atoms running out.
The mass of the star.
The mass of the star, and basically 2 different or 4 different atoms of different kind of.
Basically, the lightest atom. So hydrogen, the way suns work and stars work is that hydrogen atoms smash together, which creates nuclear fusion and is what makes the sun shine. But the larger the star, the more matter it has inside of it. Hydrogen, and then like the next element, which I think is helium. Then helium starts fusing, and so if it's big enough, it gets far enough down the line of heavier elements, then it will explode. So like our star the sun isn't nearly large enough for a supernova explosion, but it will one day swell to a red giant and then just sort of, contract again. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, well, this is the thing, because I know jack shit about this sort of thing.
I don't really either, but...
So I tried to kind of, look a bit deeper and see how it works. If there was any kind of way to pause, for lack of a better word, a supernova, or to postpone it. And there is kind of this theory, of course it's never been tested or anything, that a large enough kind of burst of energy close enough to the I guess like the center of gravity or something of the collapsing star would kind of cause a large amount of atoms to basically be displaced from the singularity, kind of collapsing into one point. It's kind of like I don't know, just pulling out a certain chunk and to keep it from reaching critical mass. But of course, that gravitational pull will continue to kind of rip that matter into one place.
Yeah, I think that's more science fiction than science, but it's an interesting.
Yeah. There's not a film called Sunshine that they do that in.
Well, I think they try and like send a bomb in the middle of the sun to keep it from exploding. it's pretty good movie actually, but
interesting.
I like the direction this podcast is taking.
We're going deeper.
It's Is Neil deGrasse Tyson coming on?
Yeah, he'll be on next. But yeah, that's I don't know. It's an interesting topic to think about. But if Jake, if you want to kind of call it there, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was gonna say, I feel like I kept hearing you spam R1 during your speech.
I may or may not be fighting the Bed of Chaos at the moment.
Right, so he is playing Dark Souls. Just wanted to confirm that.
That's dedication.
Yeah, no, look, well, I originally had Dark Souls 3 up because I wanted to look at Archdragon Peak, and when that was done, I went back to Dark Souls 1. So I'm playing through. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll start wrapping this bad boy up. I know, I originally wasn't gonna do the podcast till I got back from vacation because I'm gonna be gone till about the 14th of October, and but I wanted to do them weekly, or twice a week, or bi-weekly, or for as long as we have like a group of people that are able to just keep talking Dark Souls, and I imagine
I think bi-weekly probably won't be more conducive to us not burning out.
Yeah.
Each of us.
Yeah.
Because then it's something to look forward to as opposed to an obligation that you have every week.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
True.
I agree.
No, I agree. It's also planning and time zones are a little bit.
Yeah. I think we're literally in like 4 corners of the world, like the four of us.
It's 3 a.m. here. It's 3 a.m. here, and I'm
like it's midday on a Tuesday. Like I just happen to have work off today. So it's going to be difficult to make it like a set time every time, but I mean, I had a great time, so I mean, I would love to do it again.
I did too, but I feel like we talked over you too much, Jake, unfortunately.
No. I like the idea of letting other people do more of the talking, because there's less times I can make myself look like a jackass, which happens quite a bit if I get to rambling too much. So that works, and I definitely want to keep adding people to the show, and I definitely want to get Paragon on here for sure.
It's been excellent, and I'm happy to come on whenever you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Definitely.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
No, definitely. I love each of your guys' work. Wouldn't have just invited any random person on here, so you guys, you definitely earned the spot. But,
thanks, man.
So I just want to thank everybody for watching and listening, and definitely another shout out to Mitch, Aegon, and Smoughtown. Check them out on YouTube. They do really great Dark Souls content rather. They comment sometimes too.
Yeah.
Great comments too.
But
that's my lore playthrough is basically Dark Souls 3, the comment.
Yeah, the comment. Oh yeah.
It takes me like 3 hours at least for each episode to prepare the comments that I'm gonna read and then edit them and stuff. Like, so basically, you were right. So.
Oh yeah. But I hope this is something you guys enjoy. Look forward to it kicking back off in 2-3 weeks, I'd say. And thanks again for watching. Take it easy.